Right now, someone weaker than you is winning. Why? Not because they're better. Because they look certain. They speak without stuttering. They move without asking. They act like they deserve everything in front of them, and the world believes them. You meanwhile hesitate. You overanalyze. You wait for the right moment, the right words, the right feeling. And while you wait, someone else quietly walks off with what could have been yours. Confidence is not a trait. It's a weapon. If you don't wield it, someone else will use it against you. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The bold advance, even when they lack talent. The hesitant remain behind, even when they're gifted. Power does not belong to the best. It belongs to the most certain. This is not a feel-good video. This is a turning point. Not for motivation. Not for comfort. For control. You will learn how to erase hesitation, speak like a ruler, and move like a man who expects obedience. Watch carefully. From this moment on, your weakness is no longer tolerated. It will be replaced. You are not born weak. You are manufactured. By repetition. By reward. By rules. You are trained to obey. Trained to seek approval. Trained to ask, is this okay? What lives inside you right now is not a man. It's a servant. Conditioned to please. Programmed to submit. A loyal dog that flinches at judgment and waits for permission. That voice in your head, the one that hesitates, that overthinks, that apologizes before it speaks, that isn't you. That is the inner servant. And if you don't kill him, you will never be free. Machiavelli didn't whisper. He commanded. He didn't wait to be understood. He acted, and others were forced to understand later. He didn't ask for power. He took it because he knew. Those who ask confess they don't deserve. Your transformation begins with inversion. Every time you want to shrink, expand. Every time you want to explain, pause. Every time you want to apologize, stare. Dangerous confidence isn't born from feeling ready. It's born from doing what the inner servant would never dare. You walk faster. You take up space. You stop nodding at every word. You stop softening your tone. You speak as if your words are decisions, not suggestions. Confidence is not a mindset. It's an identity. And that identity is forged through defiance. Not against the world, but against the version of you that still wants to kneel. So here's your first rule. If it makes you small, kill it. A thought, a habit, a person, kill it. If it makes you hesitate, confront it. If it makes you weak, deny it. If it tries to be liked, laugh at it. The world will tell you to be kind, polite, and nice. Here is the Machiavellian truth. Nice men are tools. They get used. They get drained. They get replaced. Powerful men are not nice. They are precise, measured, controlled, calculated. And it all starts with slaughtering that little voice inside you that still begs to be accepted. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You need one thing, the willingness to become feared. Not by others, but by your former self. Because once you kill the servant, the ruler wakes up. Powerful men don't arrive with noise. They arrive with presence. Not through their voice, but through their stillness, their silence, their stare. You don't need to be known. You don't need to be liked. You need the atmosphere to shift the second you enter. That's how a man moves when he owns the room. Not because he was crowned, but because he behaves like he always belonged on the throne. Machiavelli saw this clearly in royal courts. The ruler wasn't always the king. Sometimes it was the man in the shadows who barely spoke. But when he did, the entire court leaned in. Silence is control. You think talking makes you dominant. It doesn't. It makes you predictable. The quiet man is the threat, because no one knows what he's calculating. When you walk into a room, you don't look for permission. You don't scan faces for approval. You observe. You absorb. You let everyone else rush to prove themselves while you measure them. Your posture speaks before your mouth does. You move slowly, not from uncertainty, but from lack of urgency. Predators don't sprint in circles. They move with economy. They wait. Calm. Ready. Most people have no idea how desperate they look, how fast they talk, how often they interrupt, how eager they are to be noticed, because they're still living beneath someone else's judgment. But when you enter like you own the room, you stop speaking to impress. You start speaking to decide. Every sentence carries finality. Every word lands like a conclusion. People begin to listen differently. They stop challenging you. They start adjusting to you. And when others speak, you wait. You let them go first. You let them reveal their hunger, their insecurity, their fear. The one who speaks first usually exposes what he's trying to protect. And once you know that, you can bend him at will. You don't chase energy. You create gravity. Because confidence at this level is not about being liked. It's about making people question their own position just by standing near you. So carry yourself like you've already won. Not with arrogance, but with the calm of someone who doesn't compete. Because he has already chosen himself. If they respect you, good. If they don't, better. Indifference to approval is the final form of power. And if the room didn't belong to you when you walked in, by the time you leave, they'll remember it as if it did. Not because you demanded it, because you never needed to. Words are not sounds. They are weapons. And most men speak as if they're begging for permission to exist. You can recognize them instantly. The rising tone at the end of every sentence. The nervous laughter. The constant, I think maybe. I'm not sure. They talk like they're apologizing for taking up air. That isn't speech. That is self-sabotage. Machiavelli knew. Power is not only in what you say, but in how you say it. When you speak like you cannot be denied, people stop dissecting your words. They submit to the weight of your certainty. Because here is the game. People are not logical. They are emotional. They don't follow truth. They follow conviction. If you sound sure, they assume you are right. If you hesitate, they assume you're not worth hearing. So what does a Machiavellian voice sound like? It is slow, calm, final. You speak as if your words are not up for debate, as if each sentence is a decree. You speak like a man who expects to be obeyed. It doesn't matter if you're surrounded by experts. If you sound like a decision, they will defer. Rule 1. Sound like the end, not the beginning. And here's what no one tells you. You don't need to speak often to be respected. In fact, the more you talk, the more opportunities you give people to decode you, challenge you, or worse, stop fearing you. Speak less. Mean more. When you do speak, remove softness. No filler. No just. No maybe. No explanations. No apologies. Never say, I'm just saying. I could be wrong. I don't know if this makes sense, but those are escape hatches for the weak. Seal them. Burn them. Say what you mean. Then stop. Let others wrestle with the silence that follows. Because silence after a strong statement is terrifying. It dares people to challenge you. Most never will. They're too afraid of what else you might say. Understand this. Your tone is your real message. The words are surface. Your calm, grounded, deliberate tone announces exactly where you sit in the hierarchy. You want to rise? Lower your pitch. Slow your tempo. Strip away nervous energy. Sound like a man with nothing to prove. And everything under control. Sound like someone who has already decided. And expects the world to catch up. You don't win conversations by shouting. You win them by speaking in a way that makes people feel your words are not opinions. They're facts. This is how rulers speak. How generals speak. How kings in exile speak before they reclaim their thrones. And if someone challenges you, you do not scramble to defend. You redirect. You don't argue. You don't explain. You don't justify. You say, I disagree. Or better, that's incorrect. Then you move on. Because when you refuse to debate, you signal something unsettling. Your reality is not up for negotiation. That is how you control a room without ever raising your voice. Confidence is not volume. It's gravity, the invisible weight behind your words. The assumption that when you speak, others should listen. When you speak, the room should feel it. Not through noise. Not through ego. Through unshakable certainty. You're not trying to be right. You're speaking like someone who can't be wrong. You're not trying to be heard. You're speaking like someone who doesn't care if they agree. Because they will eventually. That is power. From now on, you either speak like this, or you remain silent. Confidence without control is decoration. You can walk tall, speak well, move with authority. But if anyone can pull a reaction out of you with a single sentence, you're not powerful. You're exposed. This is where most men collapse. They master presence. They master speech. But their emotions still belong to everyone else. A slight insult, and they explode. A compliment, and they soften. A bit of silence, and they spiral. You are not free until you win the invisible war. The one in your own mind. That war begins with identity. Machiavelli never feared obvious enemies. He feared dependency. emotional or otherwise. He didn't trust affection. He trusted control. Because once people know what moves you, they know where to press. And once they know where to press, you're no longer dangerous. You're manageable. And manageable men are discarded the second their usefulness ends. So here is the transformation. You stop being the man who reacts. You become the man who calculates. Someone insults you. You don't defend. You observe. You extract data. What are they trying to trigger? What are they hiding behind the insult? Someone praises you. You don't melt. You analyze. Why now? What do they want? Someone ignores you. You don't panic. You turn colder. Silence becomes your weapon, not your wound. This is what it means to be psychologically unreachable. Not emotionless, but unshakable. You feel everything. You act on nothing that doesn't serve your outcome. When someone tests you, you don't flinch. You show no visible discomfort. Why? Because your mind is not a public park. It is a fortress. You decide who enters. That is how you stop being manipulated. Most men are embarrassingly easy to control. Tell them they're not enough? They overexplain. Tell them they're amazing? They chase you. Withdraw affection? They beg to get it back. That is not power. That is programming. And until you break the code, you will always be someone else's tool. So how do you rewire? You kill the need to be understood. That is the root virus. The urge to explain yourself. To be seen. To be validated. That's what makes you controllable. Burn it. You do not exist to be understood. You exist to move the world around you. Strategically, surgically, silently. You kill the fear of rejection. The Machiavellian mind does not chase acceptance. It controls access. You don't want to be invited in. You want people to wonder what happens if they're shut out. You kill the habit of reacting emotionally. Emotions are real, but irrelevant, unless weaponized. You're angry? Use it as fuel. You're insulted? Use it as leverage. You're doubted? Use it as silence. And let results do the talking later. This is how powerful men are built. They don't become robotic. They become undeniable. Once no one can move you emotionally, all they can do is watch you move with precision and fear what you'll do next. Let others chase peace and understanding. You chase clarity and control. The world doesn't care how you feel. It reacts to what you project. Certainty, direction, gravity. When your identity becomes unshakable, you become dangerous. Not because you're violent, not because you're loud, because you're unreachable. They will try. They'll test you. They'll praise you. They'll ignore you. They'll tempt you. Nothing works. You stay the same. Cold, calm, calculated. Eventually, they stop trying to manipulate you because they realize something terrifying. You are the one person they cannot move. That is the final transformation. Not posture, not speech, not appearance. Identity. You are no longer shaped by others. You shape the room. You shape the rules. You shape the outcome. You don't need to be understood. You don't need to be accepted. You don't need anything from anyone, because you now belong to no one. That is what makes you untouchable. Rejection feels like a wound to the weak. To the powerful, it's a signal. A gift. A message from the world. You were too available. Too obvious. Too desperate. Good. Now you know what must be destroyed. Rejection is not personal. It's positional. People reject what they believe they can live without. So if they said no to you, it means they believe they lost nothing. That is not an insult. That is intel. Now you know where they stand, and where you stand, which means you can now position yourself to strike later, when they are weak, and you are untouchable. Step 1. Never appear affected. The moment you show pain, they win. This isn't about them. This is about your legend. A Machiavellian mind doesn't panic when a door slams. It makes the air colder. You weren't rejected. They were disqualified from accessing you. Rejection is only real when you accept it. So you don't react. You evolve. Step 2. Withdraw your presence like a weapon. What happens when something you took for granted disappears? You begin to feel its weight. That's what you do when you're rejected. You vanish. No dramatic speech. No emotional closure. Just strategic absence. While they feel the void, you build. Machiavelli said men must be treated generously or crushed, because they take revenge for minor injuries, but not for ones too severe. So don't hurt them. Make them irrelevant. Let your silence be louder than any argument. Make them wonder where you went, how far you've risen, and whether they ever truly had access to you at all. Step 3. Rewrite the story. Rejection only stings if it looks like you were chasing something. So change the narrative. Not for them. For yourself. You weren't rejected. You withdrew from a game beneath you. You allowed them to say no because you were gathering data. You gave them one chance to recognize power. They failed. In that failure, they revealed everything you needed to know. Now you disappear and upgrade. Step 4. Convert rejection into control. Here's where you win. Rejection is clarity. Most people live in fog, unsure who respects them, who uses them, who fears them. Rejection cuts through that fog like a blade. Now you know who is blind. Now you know where your power hasn't landed yet. So you sharpen your edge. You refine your image. You amplify your value so intensely that those who once ignored you now have to explain themselves when your name comes up. And when they return, because they will, you don't need to reject them. You've already outgrown them. That is control. Silent, permanent, elegant. Step 5. Weaponize your comeback. The goal is never revenge. Revenge is emotional. Machiavellian power is calculated. You don't try to get even. You let time handle that. You reappear only when your presence causes discomfort. When your success is so visible, they can't avoid it. When the one who rejected you is now forced to watch you dominate the space they thought was too big for you. You say nothing. No sarcasm. No pettiness. Maybe a glance. Or better, no glance at all. Because you're not seeking acceptance. You're setting the standard. Final reality. Rejection is not defeat. It is a test. A filter. A fire. It reveals what must be frozen. What must be cut. And who must be left behind. You weren't rejected. You were redirected. Toward a version of yourself that does not ask twice. Does not flinch. Does not wait to be chosen. Now you build in silence. And you return as a force. They cannot reject, even if they want to. You have not been inspired. You have been rewired. You killed self-doubt, not with affirmations, but with action. You stopped waiting to feel ready. You moved. You acted. And you discovered that power doesn't belong to the perfect. It belongs to the bold. You turned rejection into fuel. No more chasing approval. Now people experience the cost of losing you. You became scarce, strategic, silent, and they noticed. You stopped entering rooms hoping to be accepted. Now you own them through presence, posture, precision. You no longer speak to be heard. You speak as if no one can afford to disagree. Above all, you rewired your identity. You are no longer predictable. You are no longer easily moved. You've become unreachable, emotionally untouchable. They can't provoke you. They can't lure you. They can't shake you, because you belong to no one now. And that makes you unforgettable. That is how legends are made. Not through noise. Not through fame. Through powerful silence, cold clarity, and ruthless consistency. You don't need to announce your transformation. They'll feel it. In your walk. In your tone. In your absence. You have become the man people watch quietly. The one who used to chase. Now chased. The one who used to ask. Now deciding. The one who no longer needs approval. Because he is the standard. This was never about simple confidence. This was about dominance. Mental, emotional, psychological. You are not here to fit in. You are here to move the pieces. Bend the room. And haunt their memory, even in silence. Legends don't beg. They don't explain. They exist. And the world rearranges itself around them. Like this video if you're done chasing. Subscribe if you're ready to become the kind of man they cannot control, cannot predict, and can never forget. This is not self-help. This is war. And you just became a weapon.